Hey guys, what's up? My name is Anthony and welcome to another edition of B&A Sports Talk. So today I want to talk about Matt Rhule versus Joe Judge. These guys I think are going to be tied together because of the controversy and all the news that this latest coaching hiring cycle has brought about. You know, you have guys like Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. They're always tied together. You know, Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. Carson Wentz and maybe, Jared Goff. Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins, maybe even Joe Judge and Ron Rivera, I don't know. But you have guys that are tied together in history based on when they were drafted. Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers, that's another one. So Joe Judge and Matt Rhule are going to be compared for years and years to see what they worked out. Joe Judge, we're not sure how long he's signed to. Matt Rhule, we know he is signed to at least 4 or 5 years. Shit hits the fan, you can buy him out after 4 or 5 years. And yeah, so these guys are very different in personality. One's old school and one's new school. Matt Rhule, he's laughing, he's having a good time. Joe Judge seems a little bit serious in his press conference. Matt Rhule was saying, you know what, we're going to treat these guys like, we're going to bring him in and we're going to hug him and we're going to be embracive. He's happy, that sort of thing. He loves the ownership. Joe Judge seems more like a working relationship, not too much of a personal one. He said, we're going to treat them like humans, not like numbers, but, you better be willing to work. This is New York. Carolina Panthers seem a little bit, we're going to try something different. We're going to have a little bit of scheme here. Both, which I like, are going to adapt their players based on their scheme. We have guys that come in like Mike Leach. I'm going to implement my system. It works sometimes with Joe Brady and LSU. We're going to do that spread offense. It works like that sometimes. But when you have Chip Kelly, I don't think it really works. Then all of a sudden you bring in your personnel. That's a little bit of a worry with Matt Rhule, but I think we're fine with that. So a little bit more comparison for Matt Rhule and Joe Judge. Matt Rhule, as far as who's going to be more successful at the end of their stint, I don't think Matt Rhule is put in an ideal situation. This is what I mean by it. So I made a video the other day saying they're going to have depth problems with the Carolina Panthers. This year, they're going to tank. They're going to get rid of Cam Newton, maybe dish out Kyle Allen for a year. David Tepper, he understands everything. He's an advanced owner, I would say. He's with the times. In his press conference, he's playing newer songs. He played Thunder by Imagine Dragons. They're new, they're upbeat, they're hip. And that's good for them because they're going to think innovatively. They're going to think with the times. Joe Judge is different, but before we get into that, Matt Rhule has a problem with general manager and Marnie Herney. Marnie Herney hasn't been drafting well. They've hit with first-round picks. With Dave Gettleman's pick, Christian McCaffrey. You have DJ Moore, who they drafted in 2018. In 2019, they drafted Brian Burns, great defensive end. But if you look at the depth of the draft, they're not really playing that well. You have Matt Khalil. They had to bring in free agents like Matt Paradis this year for their offensive line, and eventually that doesn't work out. You had a bunch of failures with the draft. You had Ian Thomas, tight end, who you thought was going to replace Greg Olsen. He's had 3 touchdowns in 2 years. Greg Olsen's getting older. Luke Kuechly is getting older. You're losing a bunch of this depth that you're going to have. You're weak up front. You had to bring in Gerald McCoy as a defensive lineman, a defensive tackle. He played all right, but obviously not to the standard that you want to. These guys are getting older, they're going to retire. Do you have a plurality of talent to bring in? I don't think so. You have Christian McCaffrey, who's going to work with Matt Rhule, but do you have another running back? Do you have Jordan Scarlett? No. You have some talent at wide receiver outside DJ Moore, but they haven't really drafted that well at that position. Cornerback, James Bradbury, he's probably going to leave. I made a whole separate video about that, so make sure to check that out. I uploaded like 2 days ago. You guys can find it. But yeah, so Joe Judge, he's going to be put in a position to succeed. He knows his personnel. He's going to be able to evaluate all of his personnel here. And the New York Giants are going to give him time. We realize we had Ben McAdoo and Pat Shurmur. He's different. I think the New York media is going to be accepting of him. And now that we know he set his foot, his first foot was a good foot. His press conference is a little bit too tough for me. A little bit like, are you sure we're going to tackle in pads? Some concerns I have from Joe Judge is, the old school guys who like the pads in practice, they're old. They're not going to want to, hit. And we've seen guys like Gronkowski who retire because they can't deal with the ins and outs of football. So you're going to turn away a lot of those guys. And also a lot of the young guys that you're bringing in, they're used to not practicing in pads. They're not used to tackling. And some of the talent that may be great, like your Odell's, going to be like, you're teaching me how to catch a ball? I know how to catch a ball. I'm going to do my own thing. So you have to realize you have to bring in the right personnel. You have to bring in those Patriot guys. It's a very fickle business. You can be really good if everyone buys in, or you can sink. That happened with Michael Strahan. He ended up buying in 2007, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. Tom Coughlin, we've seen it before. It's very hit or miss here. But Dave Gettleman is a good drafter. He's better than Marnie Herney. And we've seen already, Dave Gettleman left, and all of a sudden the Carolina Panthers are falling off a cliff with their talent. So Dave Gettleman is going to be able to draft. They're going to work together. They have a working relationship. They know which type of talent that they want. And yeah, so I think in the end, it's going to be very close. It's going to be very close. Both divisions are really hard. The Giants are set up to succeed in their division. Carolina Panthers are probably going to be set up to succeed in their division. The NFC South, where you have the Saints, the Falcons, who are fast, who are new, innovative, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a little bit hard-nosed. But so last topic I want to talk about comparing these two is the assistants that they're going to bring in. Joe Judge said in his press conference, I'm not going to be the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I'm going to be the head coach. And my responsibility is making sure we're fundamentally sound. We're taking the right timeouts. We're taking the right challenges, all those sort of things, the basics, the anti-Pat Shurmur. But that means we have to bring in good guys in order to be successful. Offensive coordinator, I've heard a bunch of rumors. I've heard Jason Garrett, Freddie Kitchens. I've heard even Vince Lombardi's grandson, who would be a good fit. We'll make a separate video about that later, but it's going to be very important to Daniel Jones' development. You have to bring in a guy who wants to use Saquon Barkley. We invested a lot into him. And our defensive coordinator, hopefully Wade Phillips. He runs at 3-4. He is kind of old. But Joe Judge has an old school mentality. Wade Phillips just worked with Sean McVay, who's more of a new school guy, more of a lax personality. We could take practice off today, that sort of thing. But so Wade Phillips is an interesting guy in defense. I've heard Chris Richard potentially. I don't think Wink Martindale, but that's going to be very interesting who we bring in a defensive coordinator. Matt Rhule, he wants to bring in guys that he's worked with before. Phil Snow on defense, he's already brought him in. He's worked with him in Baylor and at Temple. They've worked together for 6 years now. He's a guy that's going to be able to say yes and no to Matt Rhule. He's going to be able to challenge Matt Rhule, and they have a working relationship like that. That's very important to Matt Rhule, which is a good thing. He's also worked with the Detroit Lions, and looking at his resume, a lot of college, but he's been coaching for 40 plus years. So that's very important for Matt Rhule. He has a guy with experience in Phil Snow, and a guy that they may bring on offensive coordinator. I've heard Pat Shurmur. I've heard, who else did I hear? I forget who, but we obviously heard Joe Brady may be interested in getting a position now that Joe Burrow is gone. He may even go to Cincinnati with their coach and Zach Taylor. But Sean Ryan is a guy that I've been hearing. He's 47 years old, out of New York. He's coached with the New York Giants when they won the Super Bowl. He was their wide receivers coach, quarterbacks coach, wide receivers coach again. He worked the Houston Texans and more recently with the Detroit Lions. He's a two-time Super Bowl champion with the Giants. And I think Matt Rhule is going to be able to bring him in, and they're going to be able to run their scheme. He's a pretty smart guy. We'll see how they work. Obviously, these aren't guys that you're like, oh, this is sexy. This is not guys you've heard of before, but it's guys that Matt Rhule is going to be able to work with. That's going to be interesting. And these guys are going to be ultimately judged. I hate that. Every time I say judge, I think of Joe Judge. But they're going to be judged on who they bring in. It's going to be very interesting to see how they end up. We're obviously going to talk more about it later. I have some theories about the Giants, who they're going to draft. Do you draft Isaiah Simmons, who evaluate the talent? He could be a safety, a linebacker. I think he's going to love Jabril Peppers. Or do you bring in an Andrew Thomas, like Hog Mollies? That's going to be a very interesting conversation to say. Do the Carolina Panthers draft the quarterback this year, or do they go best player available and take the low road and take this rebuild slow? It's going to be very interesting. Let me know what you guys think about my opinions. Let me know your opinions in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.